Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering, as far as free energy goes, is there a groundwork being laid for people to come out with that kind of technology? I know my dad, for one, was given a technology, and he's had his life threatened. And I know that there's a lot of people that are really brilliant, but there's not been a groundwork placed for them to be able to come out with this technology in a safe way, and also in a way that, I mean, these technologies are expensive. You know what I mean? Those things don't. So, is there a way for this to
There is. There's a great question about the free energy, so-called 0 point. The groundwork has been laid. We've been laying it for 20 years. And if you go to our website, also look at a program I did. It was a 4-hour program similar to this on free energy and the history of it and what the strategy is to bring it out. Without going through 4 hours of material, which is already up on our site, on our YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/S Disclosure, S as in Sirius, but S Disclosure. By the way, this movie, Sirius, is up there. It's had about 1 million views now. Yeah, they're quite interesting, yeah. And last year it was the #1 documentary on Netflix. But what I would say is that if someone actually has something like that operational, they need to get hold of me immediately. But they need to be prepared to dump it on the internet, no holds barred. Forget patenting, forget intellectual property, forget secrecy. All those are traps in the system to keep it from coming out. Moreover, don't sit on it. Okay, so the people who sit on these technologies and don't have a few 100 million people know about it are going to be dead. The people who sit on it and don't put it out open source are going to either have it bought out and black shelved, put on a black shelf, or they're going to end up disappearing. Now, this is a fact. So I have analyzed with a lot of people who have been in the intelligence community for much longer, some of them almost as long as I've been alive, that there's one pathway out, and that is open source it, disclose it massively, and get it out there and have it reproducible. Now, if anyone has anything, I have a team of people, engineers, I have people on my team, some of them have private planes and jets. We can get it and we can secure it, and you know, if they take me out, you're going to know why I was taken out. Because I recently went on a mission. It turned out the person didn't have anything. It was they had mismeasured the energy output and input. But before I went on that expedition to this inventor, I had dead man triggers all over the place, meaning that if anything happened to me, everything got out, everything went out. So you need to have, and one of the good things about being a public figure like I am now, where I can reach millions and millions and millions of people, is that it's very difficult to keep me off the radar scope. And so I would say, pass it on, hand it off to me. Now, if someone says, I've worked for 20 years and put X amount of, I have folks on my team now who can make that person whole financially. I mean, I can't, because I've given up about $12 million of my income as a doctor doing this stuff, believe it or not. I mean, you figure $500,000–600,000 a year for this long, do the math. You know, can you do math? But my point is that there are people that we've reached in the last year or two that can help make this happen. However, it can't happen unless the technology can be tested, independently reproduced. We have people that do it or aren't going to hoax the results. And then while that's happening, massively disclosed on the internet. And when I say massively, streamed on Facebook Live, streamed on YouTube, streamed on everything. The danger is if you have a technology like this and you think you're going to outsmart these devils, you're going to be one dead son of a bitch. All right? Okay, so the only way out is squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube and get it out. Now, there are people who say, well, I don't want to do that, it's too dangerous, then let me do it. I mean, I've been taking the shots for a quarter of a century, and I'm still here by some miracle. So, it has been a miracle. So I think that I'm willing to do that, because if someone threatens me, it'd be the worst day of their life. I'm not going to go any further than that. But there are interests that do not want this project to fail. But I can't do it. I mean, I'm a doctor. I'm not an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer. But if someone has something operational and plans that make it reproducible, and it can be independently vetted, i.e. the scientific method, and they will allow us to massively disclose it and be honest with you, get out of the way. It's like when code blue, you're going to have to defibrillate someone with 360 joules of electricity, and if you're touching that body, you get electrocuted. Zap. People need to get clear, unless they want to be in that arena. But it is the very big league of taking on the worst special interests who want to stop it. I'm willing to do it. I've been willing to do it for decades. Unfortunately, my group has never taken clear possession of something that we are allowed to disclose. I've seen technologies, and we've tested some, but the people want to play spy versus spy, and I'm going to keep it quiet and proprietary, and I'm going to outfox the intelligence community by dividing the technology into 100 patents we'll never know. I said, by the time you have the thought about what you're going to do, these devils have technologies that have pulled that thought out of your consciousness. And I am not exaggerating. If you think you're going to outfox those people, that is a fool's errand. So listen to me carefully when I say this. The only way that these technologies are going to come out is to get out of the paradigm of worrying about monetization and productization and capitalizing on it at the first stage of it. Now, down the road, my proposal, I have a proposal that I've written called the New Earth Energy Incubator. And what that is like Google has an incubator fund, and other people do, where you put resources in and you create these technologies, but you do it like GitHub. Everybody know what GitHub is? It's a software engineering, and it's open source, and it's just shared. It's not proprietary. But it's become actually incredibly successful. So there is a way to do this where we do it open source, multiple points of collaboration, and you take something that is a level 1 free energy system and move it to a level 500 in 12 months by open source and collaboration. That could happen, but someone has to be willing to understand why this strategy exists. It isn't that I'm trying to rob anyone of their hard work. It's because I'm trying to save their life. And I'll give you an example. The Orion project, which is an energy division of my operation, you can see on our website, we were bidding with a group, we didn't know who they were, to get the Stan Meyer, the water-fueled car. But that wasn't what we really were after. In that collection was a toroid, a donut-shaped electromagnetic system that had a national security order on it from the 80s. And it was in the collection, and we were given a heads up about it by someone who had worked with Stan Meyer. So my group only had a few $100,000. A group out of Michigan came in with several million and outbid us. And I said at the time, if they do this secretively in a proprietary way, they are in mortal danger. I've just had it confirmed in March that they've all been assassinated. So, yes. And so the problem with the engineers and physicists and inventors is that they may be brilliant in that area, but they don't know what the strategy has to be here. That's what I want to do. My wife has to hook up the computers and TV. I don't do that. I'll break it. Give me a defibrillator, I'm fine. But I think you need someone who can be the Sherpa, a guide through the intelligence community and the strategy on this, and that's what I would offer to do if I found anyone with the technology. Now, unfortunately, usually people are going to take the big buyout, all right? So, or they're going to want to try to keep it proprietary, or they're going to try to keep it patented and secret. All those conventional business things that works fine with an iPhone or what have you is fatal, and I mean literally fatal, with a free energy system. And I've been trying to educate people about this for a very long time, but what I've seen over the last 20 years is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over expecting a different result. I see the same mistakes and there's a set number of them that these people have made over and over again. And each person who comes along with a discovery on this area of technology, 0 point and what have you, they think they've got the world by the tail. Well, as I've said, they think that the whole world's going to come knocking on their door offering them, everything. And I said the first knock on the door is going to be Murder Incorporated. And unfortunately, those folks, or they're going to be very wealthy and the technology's gone. Now, I know some people personally who have had technologies, are now decamillionaires or centimillionaires, who took a whole lot of money and the technology's on a black shelf. But that doesn't benefit the world. Now, that person's very wealthy, but what good does that do the world? Now, I think we have to think, again, how do we develop a strategy that accounts for the reality of the world we live in, not the world we'd like it to be. The world we live in have people who are vicious at wanting to suppress this technology, and they will do everything in their means to see it is kept out of the public domain. Therefore, the only way to get it out to benefit the human race initially is to not worry about the money part of it. Now, if the person really has a lot of assets tied up in its development, I'm not going to mention any names, but I can tell you on my speed dial list are people who could make those people whole financially. But hand it off to us, ain't going to go into a black hole with me. It's going to be on the internet as soon as I have the proof that it works. And maybe before, although I don't want to have egg on my face. I've had egg on my face before. So any of you who know someone with a system like this, have them contact me, and we will liberate it for the people of Earth. Let's see, it's getting a little late, but I'll take one more question. Yes, from this young lady.
I have one question. It's connected, but it's anyway. So you talked about like projected images and holograms and etc.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about plant medicine, like ayahuasca, as far as like for example, as far as like healing the people and uniting people and getting people to this level of to this heart frequency that that we need to get to the next step? And what are your thoughts about that?
And she's asking about plant medicine and specifically ayahuasca. My own view of it is that I think there are, and I'm very non-judgmental about any of these issues. I'm a Vedanta, Vedic person. So Sanskrit and the Vedas and consciousness being developed through meditative techniques, I find a safer, faster, and more permanent way of reaching those states of consciousness. Now, there are native peoples around the world that have had plant substances that have facilitated. My worry about it in our current culture is that it becomes a point of someone needing to do it more than once or twice as having an epiphany. And we're famous in the West for then abusing the substance instead of using it. So what I would say is that if we had the restraint and the wisdom of the ancient people, I think probably some of those could have a role. I'm not saying it doesn't have a role for some people now, because everyone has to make an individual choice. My own path on this, in terms of the development of human consciousness and healing, is to understand the primacy of consciousness, experience it, and use sort of your innate abilities without any sort of outside sources. Now, that's just my own perspective. It's worked for me, and it works for my people I train for contact and remote viewing experiences. And I think that in the long run, it may, for some people, be more arduous and require more self-discipline, but has, in the long run, a more lasting effect over time. So that's just my own perspective about it. But on the other hand, I don't judge in a negative way at all people who might, want to try different things to, and by the way, as a physician, in terms of medical marijuana and things like that, I think it's ridiculous. It's illegal. I mean, there are a lot of things that are illegal that are ridiculous that they're illegal, and I'll go on the record there. You know, I had to have surgery about 11 months ago for something, and the surgeon wrote me for 60 Percocets. I took one, it made me so sick, and all I could say is, you know, where can I find some, of course we live in Virginia, you go to prison, and they're watching me like a hawk, so I can't do anything. But, you know, there are certain things that our society is so stupid. Well, you know, I was set up to be put in prison for 3 years by the jackbooted fascists in the National Park Service. I took a group to meditate and pray on a beach in North Carolina. We got permits to be there at night. The person who gave the permits worked for the permitting office until a month before she came out with us. But her best friend was the chief ranger. They set us up. The federal justice system tried to put me in prison for 3 years for meditating for universal peace on a beach. True story. I had to go to federal court, pay a $5,000 fine, and I stand before you a convict with a misdemeanor for having had a group of a few people sitting on a beach praying and meditating. That is how fascistic our federal system is. Anyway, but what I would say is that, you know, I encourage people to really explore how to develop higher states of consciousness through meditative states and other states, and look at what they have within themselves. I think everything we need to develop the high, and I was talking about this yesterday at Paula Harris's conference, everything we need to attain to every state of higher consciousness, we already have sitting within us. It's all in us, hardware, software. And it's all about the practicing of the techniques. So I would encourage people to do that. One last question, and then that'll be it. Oh, we'll go over here. She's getting a workout. I guess we needed 2 mics.
So my question is, I know you're accepting donations online to help bring out the free energy thing. You said you need about like $6.3 million.
Well, yeah.
I just wanted to know, are you accepting donations right now?
Yes, we are. I mean, I think that if you go on at SiriusDisclosure.com, we have a whole section about.
Like here.
Oh, like here, sure, yes, of course. But thank you, yeah, and people who want to help support that. And what I think we also want to be able to say is, we need people who understand what the environmental consequences are to this secrecy, who then begin to fund, not myself, but engineers and inventors and technical people who understand this, but who have been tinkering in their garages with no support for decades. I think that it's really something that has to get some serious institutional support behind it, and the public could do it. I think that we could even crowdfund it if we just had a prototype that put out 100 watts that was provable and open source. Because, you know, this movie, Unacknowledged, is now the second highest funded documentary in history. Someone came out with a smart water cooler that we raised $10 million for. I don't see why, if we had, it was a beer cooler or something that had like a smartphone for beer guys, you know, going to the stadium. But I think that if we had even one proof of principle prototype that we could disclose openly, we could then open source or crowdsource the funding for it. But I also know that there are people who get behind it. In the meanwhile, we need support to do, if someone doesn't come forward with something operational that they'll let go forward, we need to find people who will support basic science R&D. And you know, this isn't happening at universities, and it's not happening in corporations, because as soon as someone starts on that path, I know some universities and others have, they get shut down. So this is why it has to be done with the whole world watching. My view of it, if this was a laboratory and you had people in there, all the work at all the workstations would be streamed online live. The results would be released live in real time, but the actual work would be. So that there would be, see, this idea is very, you couldn't have done this 10 years ago. Now you can do it. So that, how do they shut that down? All right? And now you'd have to have some good internet security. But you do this because then if you have millions and millions of people begin to see this process, Not only do they learn it in real time and begin to replicate it all over the world, so the cat's out of the bag, but you have the security umbrella of millions of people knowing, so that if these devils come in, they're caught red-handed shutting it down. And then people will march in the streets and say no more. So the technology didn't exist to do this 10 years ago. It does now. So that's what I'd like to see us organize on the technology front. Thank you very much. Well, look, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and being here. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.